Welcome to the Grandpa Channel. I'm Steve Harris, but my grandkids call me Rivers. Here we ask a simple question. What did life teach you the hard way? Because a lifetime reveals things you can't learn any other way. On this show, we sit down with people who've lived a little, stumbled a little, and learned a few things along the way. Sometimes the stories are funny, sometimes they're tender, but the best ones carry a little hard-earned wisdom. So pull up a chair, because what a lifetime reveals can steady another.
What's your story? More often than not, people are not asked, and that story dies with them.
Welcome to the Grandpa Channel. We have a delightful guest. His name is Bob Farewell.
In another 7 weeks, I will be 79.
No way, you do not look 79.
Thank you. Thank you. I started bragging that I'd never eaten McDonald's, and everybody was in shock. So now I've had more fun people sending me gift certificates at Christmas for McDonald's.
What did life teach you the hard way? Tell me the story behind how life taught you that lesson.
Well, there isn't any one lesson that I can clearly identify, but there were outcomes of my life, that decisions I made that were foolish at the time or were ingrained in me as I was growing up. My mom and dad, wonderful parents, but my mother smoked cigarettes from the time she was a teenager. And so I would find myself pilfering from her cigarette packs at the age of 12. And so I was literally a heavy smoker by the time I was 20. Having been raised in a parochial environment through 12 years of school, and I discovered that by going to college, I could smoke while I was in college, and I could drink. Now, I didn't have a problem with either one of them, but I fell in love with a woman who was 1 month into the program of AA, Alcoholics Anonymous, and she was gracious. She'd open my beers and pour out my ashtray, and she said, why don't you come with me to an AA meeting? And when I got there, I heard their stories, and I thought, they're nothing like mine, and I don't have a problem. And the more I fell in love with this woman, the more meetings I would go with her. And I would then say to the group, hi, my name is Bob, and I have a sincere desire to quit drinking. And they would all laugh, and they go, hi, Bob. And they knew at the moment I acknowledged that I was an alcoholic, I was on the road to recovery. And praise God, it's been 48 years. Both of us have not had a drink.
Wow.
It changed our life. So, but it was a hard lesson. It was one that I had to accept the fact that alcohol, particularly and cigarettes, had a controlling factor on my life. And it was depriving me of the joy of life that was waiting for me, that I've been able to experience now for 48 years.
What other kind of tough lessons or life lessons that you've learned through tough times?
I discovered that as a result of my divorce in my first marriage, that being selfish sucks. And I am one of the top 10 most selfish people on the planet. And I had to discover that if I was going to have things change in my life from that day forward, I had to stop focusing on the kingdom of me. And fortunately, I was able to, through God's grace.
But did it take you a long time to kind of come to that conclusion?
No, it kind of radicalized when you finally reach a point in your life when you're morally, physically, financially bankrupt. You're doing chin-ups on the gutter. That your life can't get any lower than this.
Right.
And you still think, so far, so good. I'm an optimist. So far, so good. No, so far you've survived. Now, how do you get past this? And being able to reach out for help, and help was available, and mentors came into my life, and I received it, practiced it, and own it. And that's essentially where I am at this moment.
Did you know your grandfather, Bob?
My father never knew his father, and their language of love was teasing him. He became a consummate master at teasing, and he taught us all how to tease one another. Well, if you know anything about teasing, you know after a while it's not fun, it's painful. And so we're trying to break that pattern in this family, but we find that it's not life-giving.
Bob, I was going to ask you to tell me a little bit. We interviewed your wonderful daughter, Becca. She's an amazing person. Give us a little bit of background, about the accident and kind of give us your perspective.
She first went skydiving as almost a dare. Her mother said, you need to go. Becca is terrified of heights. At that point, she couldn't even climb a set of stairs without being terrified that she'd fall.
Mm-hmm.
But she got convinced to go into an airplane, and they have it filmed when the door opened and she's standing there harnessed to her tandem instructor.
Yeah.
He looks out and the camera shows her face fully, and she's saying, oh my God, what am I doing here?
Yeah.
And she jumps out.
Yeah.
Well, I was on the ground to receive her, and she ran up to me.
Yeah.
And she said, Dad, I'm no longer terrified of heights. She then became enamored with the whole sport of skydiving, and as a result, for 12 years, became a professional.
Yeah.
Now, no father ever wants to get the phone call that we get when there is a tragedy. In this case, her very best friend called us and said, there's been an accident. We don't know how serious it is at this moment, but she's being transported by helicopter to the University of Utah. Now, we were living in Central Florida, and that's where our home is. And we left the next day with a bag of clothing. And that was 5 years ago, and we haven't gone back home yet. We have settled here in Utah and purchased a home. We love it here. But the idea of encountering this tragedy totally changes the direction of where our lives were going to be spent in our retirement years. Now, I don't call it retirement anymore.
What do you
I call it refirement.
Oh, I like that. Yeah.
Yeah. I discovered that there's a higher calling when you're engaged in a tragedy within your own family, and that you're a caregiver. There was an opportunity to feed my daughter one day, and you have to understand she's completely paralyzed. She can only move from the top of her shoulders to the top of her head is the only thing she can move. Everything has to be done for her. Everything that you and I would take for granted. Just scratching your nose, somebody has to do that for her. So I found myself one day feeding her by her bedside in the rehabilitation hospital she was in. And as I was feeding her, and I'm looking across the bed into this magnificent door that's a sliding door that hides the bathroom. And my mind's just drifting, and it suddenly hit me with a ton of bricks feeling. And I went, which is never a good sound to do when you're in a hospital. And my daughter went, what's wrong? What's wrong? And I said, I just realized that men of my age, most of them are out chasing a white ball somewhere on a green somewhere. And here I am feeding a paralyzed daughter. And it's giving me an enormous sense of purpose. And Becca said, well, that's really cool for you, Dad, but it sure sucks for me. And I suddenly realized, yes, it does suck for her. But it did impact me that I truly have a purpose that I would never have chosen, nor would anyone ever choose.
Yeah.
But life circumstances have led me to this place in a preparation manner to be able to handle most, if not all, of Becca's care and needs.
Wow. Yeah.
It's amazing. And we invested wisely. We were able to walk away from Florida and all of our friends. I had 3 businesses I was operating at the time and left that 5 years ago, and we're still A-okay.
So do you ever wake up or catch yourself thinking, how am I going to keep going? Do you ever get discouraged as a caregiver, Bob?
5 years ago, we were cautioned by the professionals that said, Bob and Tina, if you're going to be caring for your daughter at home, number one, 99.9% of people with her degree of injury, never speak again and have to be fed by a tube. Becca speaks and she eats.
Mhm.
She said, but her condition is one that typically they have to be put into an institution because family can't care for her.
Mhm.
They just are not set up for it. Neither were we, but we had a desire to do that. But we were cautioned. They said, Bob, you can burn out. You
Mhm.
have to be aware that you can become a liability
Mhm.
rather than an asset for your daughter.
Mhm.
And I poo-pooed it. I said, no way. I mean, I could handle this. 2 years later, I fully understood the word burnout and what it
Really?
meant.
Huh?
Yes, we typically, as entrepreneurs and founders of companies and whatnot, we thought we could do it all. But eventually, you get to a place where you have to delegate some things to other people.
Mhm.
And eventually, we started bringing in more and more caregivers that would work 3 or 4 hours a day, several days a week, which would give us the break we needed.
Mhm.
But on up until that burnout time, there were many times where I thought, I can't go another day.
Yeah.
I can't imagine where the energy is going to come from.
Mhm.
Now, the beauty of my relationship with my wife, Tina, is that we're like a tag team. You remember the old wrestling tag teams?
I do.
Well, when I'm up, she's down. Or when she's up, I'm down. Or we get to a happy medium. But we are able to pass off to each other the responsibilities that each of us
Mhm.
have acquired. Now, my shift, if you will, starts at 4:30 in the morning, and her shift starts at 10 o'clock in the morning.
Mhm.
And then the two of us will do the rest of the shifts in the afternoon. And then she's a late night person, and I got to go to bed at 9, or I won't be up at 4:30. But we got into a rhythm, and we found that caring for her was purposeful. It surrounded us with people, particularly in our church family, that just could not give us enough love and support.
Oh, that's wonderful.
And that, to me, you can't do it alone.
Mhm.
And the moment you think you are alone doing these things, that's when all of the negative thinking starts happening and your burnout intensifies.
It's obvious that you're a man of faith. Do you feel like your faith now is different than it was pre-accident? And if so, in what way, Bob?
Well, I mentioned to you my shift starts at 4:30. Let me tell you where that time frame came from. First of all, I had a mother. She perished when she was 54. But my mother loved the Lord God, loved Jesus, and she wanted nothing more for her oldest son to love him as well. And I was a rebel. I mean, I went from the 60s and I was in Berkeley and I did all the crazy stuff
Yeah.
that young people did during those 60s, and I had no space in my life for God or religion of any kind. But if you have a mother that won't shut up, you might as well give up. So I eventually gave up, essentially surrendered to Jesus of Nazareth, and found such an enormous love in return. I wanted to learn more about him. I wanted to climb the rock of my faith. So I made a request, said, I'm going to get up earlier. I love sleeping until 8:30 in the morning. So I said, I really want to study more about who this Jesus is. I want to learn more in the Bible. So I want to purpose to do the Bible. I'll get up at 7. And then I felt this urge. I said, not early enough.
Really?
Okay, yeah. I said, but I got all of these businesses to run and I got emails to answer and all of the, and he goes, it's not early enough. Okay, 6, not early enough. 5, not early enough. 4, 4:30, I'll cut you a deal. Okay. Well, I got up at 4:30 in the morning starting January of that year, and I purposed to read and study the Word every morning for those few hours before anyone else got up. And amazingly, had it not done that for me, had this not happened,
Yeah.
with this growing knowledge and love of my Savior, that when my youngest son, perished that summer, I would not have been prepared for the overwhelming sorrow that hit me. And I was able to call on the strength of the Lord. And to this day, particularly with Becca's injury some 8 years after my sons perished, with her injury, I'm in a much better and stronger place as a result of being faithful to that 4:30 time to read the Word. Well, That's my shift. I'm automatically trained to be up at 4:30 in the
Well,
morning.
that's interesting. Yeah, I hadn't
Yeah,
thought about it that way.
yeah.
So
And
you
that's
you'd
how
be prepared even though I
correct.
didn't really know it, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
No, had no knowledge, no anticipation of this kind of adventure in my life.
Yeah.
But I love it, and I love being now. Of course, my daughter has recently married at the end of November, and her wonderful husband has taken over the 4:30 shift, and I get to have that much more quality time of my own.
Wonderful.
And I'm grateful. Yeah, it's been wonderful.
Bob, what would you say to a 30-year-old Bob Farewell?
It's not entirely your
Hmm.
stop taking on all the guilt for having done all that you've done wrong. Accept the responsibility of doing what's the next right thing. I love to procrastinate,
Hmm.
and I lost too many wonderful years that I procrastinated that could have accomplished so much more.
Right.
Be fearless. Fear not. Life's a gift. Stop being selfish.
Hmm.
Serve more. Woo! Givers get. Okay,
Hmm.
start giving.
Hmm.
That's probably it in a nutshell.
Have there been times when you've been really discouraged, Bob, especially with the last 5 years of taking care of Becca? I mean, I suppose you could spend a lot of time thinking of things that Becca can't do or things you can't do because you are serving and loving your daughter. But do you ever let discouragement in the door a little bit, or does it happen much?
It's a natural consequence of dreams that you once had, you won't have again. But as a proverbial optimist,
Mhm.
I find that even in those discouraging moments, there are divine appointments. I'm going to be meeting someone. I'm going to be hearing their story that's going to change my trajectory. All of those things. And it's a choice. I find that if I wake up in the morning and the first thing in my mind is that listing the things I'm grateful for changes the whole paradigm of the day. If I get up out of the bed and I find that I'm angry or resentful, and that carries through the rest of the day too. My goal is to find a reason, list all the things I'm grateful for. The fact that my eyes opened and I, like you, had my cataracts done and I'm not having to wear glasses anymore.
Yeah.
And I got 2 titanium knees and I'm able to get out of the bed. I took up skiing at the age of 77. That's being a heck of an optimist, especially with all the young people on snowboards around you. It's
Yeah.
remarkable. Life is a continuum of choices we make. And my choosing to be grateful changes everything.
I'll tell you that we're not meeting in person, obviously. You're not right next to me. But one thing that you exude through this interview is you have a peacefulness about you that I can kind of feel, and I feel positively affected by.
I want to find myself in a position to be an encourager,
Mm-hmm.
not a criticizer. Now, I might criticize in my own mind a list of things I wish were different, but if I pinpoint things in people that I meet or my relatives, my children, my grandchildren, and I find the positive, focusing on that, I become a mega passionate encourager.
That's it for today's episode of the Grandpa Channel. If something you heard made you laugh, pause, or see life a little differently, pass it along. We're gathering the lessons people learn the hard way, the stories, the second thoughts, and the wisdom that only comes with time. And we'd love to hear yours. What did life teach you the hard way? Until next time, keep the perspective honest and the stories coming. I'm Rivers, and I'm out of here.